Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because, well, we're embarking on a truly fascinating journey. We're going to take a really close look at the complex, perfectly balanced systems of nature that surround us, sustain us, and literally make our existence possible. As we go through the information today, you'll see how every single living thing on this planet is connected by these invisible threads of energy and reliance. Let's get started.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start off with the web of life, then move into the forest guardians, take a look at breaking the balance, and wrap things up with the fight to protect.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1. The Web of Life.
You know, we often think of nature as just this random collection of animals and plants, right? But it's actually a highly structured, perfectly balanced machine, and the foundational rule of this biological machine is interdependence. That's the concept that all living organisms depend on non-living elements like sunlight, water, and air, as well as on each other just to survive. Now, I want to pause here and explicitly link this concept back to you. Yes, you. As an organism watching this explainer right now, you are completely bound by this exact same rule. You're just as dependent on these exact same non-living elements to survive as, say, a towering oak tree or a microscopic bacteria. We are all locked into this system together.
So to really understand this interdependence, we have to track the flow of energy. Energy moves sequentially through what we call the food chain, and it almost always starts with the sun. From the sun, that energy steps down through three distinct biological categories: producers, consumers, and decomposers.
Let's break down each of these steps because it builds an incredible mini-narrative of how life literally sustains life. First up, we have the producers. These are our green plants, and they do the heavy lifting of capturing the sun's energy and making food via photosynthesis. They're the only ones actually creating new food from sunlight. Next up are the consumers. These are organisms that just cannot make their own food. You've got your herbivores that directly eat the plants and carnivores that eat those herbivores. Finally, we reach the decomposers. Think of them as the ultimate cleanup crew. Microorganisms like fungi, bacteria, and earthworms. When producers and consumers die, these decomposers break down that dead organic matter and return those absolutely crucial nutrients right back to the soil. It's this perfect, closed loop.
But, as you probably guessed, nature isn't just a single straight line. Multiple food chains interlink to form food webs, which shows how most organisms consume, and are consumed by, more than one species. I want you to picture this web like a massive, intricate Jenga tower. Every single wooden block represents a species, and because it's a web, every piece relies on the weight and support of the others around it. It's a brilliant but incredibly delicate structure.
That brings us to Section 2, the Forest Guardians. Now that we understand the biological systems that build that Jenga tower, let's look at the human beings who have historically lived in perfect harmony with this delicate web. For centuries, specific Adivasi tribal communities like the Gond, Santal, Munda, Toto, and Bhil have lived deep within these ecosystems. These are real people living in traditional tribal hamlets known as padas, and they don't just live near the environment, they are completely embedded within it.
This brilliantly illustrates a truly symbiotic relationship. The Adivasis rely entirely on the forest for their fundamental needs, things like shelter, food, timber, and medicines. But it's not a one-way street. In return, they actively protect and literally worship the ecosystem. They are an integrated part of the food web. They act as its natural guardians, not its destroyers.
So, how do we legally protect these guardians in the modern era? Well, it all comes down to a critical number: 25. Now, this isn't just some arbitrary figure. It's a critical legal threshold of continuous residency required for these tribal communities to gain legal rights to the land they've been protecting for so long.
This 25-year threshold comes from the Right to Forest Act of 2007. Basically, this act grants legal rights over forest land and resources to forest-dwelling communities who have lived there for at least 25 years. This law was a monumental, absolutely crucial step in legally recognizing and protecting the very tribal communities who essentially act as the forest's immune system.
But what happens when things go wrong? Let's move to Section 3, breaking the balance.
Unfortunately, that immune system we just talked about is under attack, which totally disrupts our previously established Jenga tower. Now, what's really interesting here is how you can directly see the cause and effect. On the one hand, we have human activities acting as the cause, things like clearing trees for agriculture, mining, or industrial expansion. And, as a direct consequence, you see how they trigger devastating systemic collapses. We see habitat destruction disrupting the food chain, soil erosion starving the producers, and tragically, the displacement of the very tribal communities who protect the land in the first place. When you pull those blocks out for industrial expansion, the entire ecological Jenga tower starts to crash down.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 4, the fight to protect.
The story doesn't end with collapse, thankfully. Where there is destruction, there's also incredible human resilience. A prime example of this grassroots intervention is the Chipko movement of 1973. This was a legendary effort in the Himalayas led by brilliant activists like Gara Devi. When loggers came to clear the forests, these local women physically hugged the trees to protect them. Just think about the literal meaning of their actions for a second. They understood the deep interdependence of their ecosystems so well that they were willing to put their own physical bodies on the line right between the chainsaws and the bark, knowing that if those trees fell, severe soil erosion and environmental destruction would inevitably follow.
And it's not just massive group movements either. We can zoom in from the macro level to a micro example of individual power. Take Salamara the Thimaka, an extraordinary environmentalist from Kanakata. Through sheer individual effort, her dedication resulted in the planting of literally thousands of trees. She reminds us that a single dedicated person has the immense power to actively restore the web of life. She didn't wait around for some grand organization to step in. She just started planting, providing massive new resources for producers, consumers, and decomposers alike.
All of this brings us to the end of our explainer, and directly back to you. We've seen how energy flows from the sun to the soil, how tribal communities integrate perfectly into the system, and how fragile the whole structure really is when it's threatened by deforestation. But we've also seen the incredible power of individuals to protect and restore it. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. What action will you take to maintain the delicate food web that you are inherently a part of? Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.